What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. Hopefully my microphone sounds a little bit better today. It's a long story. I'll talk about it on a different podcast, but the solution hopefully allows you to listen to me, and it sounds a little bit better than what the last episode did. So I was thinking about something the other day that isn't a fully baked thought quite yet. So I thought, why not try and tease it out together? Here's what got me thinking about this, and maybe you can relate. Hopefully you can relate. I'm an avid podcast listener. I've been listening to podcasts and Apple Podcasts since the beginning of the launch of this app on Apple. I used to have a lot of window time in the car in the beginning of my career, so a lot of the time was spent listening to podcasts. You can't just listen to the same song, even though I had a lot of music in my car. You get tired of listening to music, so you need something to entertain your brain, and for me, that was podcasts. Needless to say, even back in 06 and 08, I was dreaming of starting my own, as I felt it to be this natural next step for someone so immersed in the podcast community. It felt like a community at the time. At the time, there were only some talk radio stations on the regular radio, and there was some satellite radio stations, Howard Stern. Other than audiobooks, for me, which I also consumed a lot of, and not so much of those talk radio stations, podcast was always a source of information, inspiration, and maybe even a form of entertainment. In a similar fashion, I looked to books for some of the same things. And I started to reflect on what exactly it is that I'm looking for and being clear about that. I think if we looked at the categories of things that we consume, a major bit of them would be exactly these three categories: information, inspiration, and entertainment. There's probably a few more that I can't think of right now. And personally, I actively seek to consume just as much inspiration as I do information. It's probably, for me, a tug of war between those things on a daily basis. The reason I wanted to talk about this is to point out that it's very important for us to know which category is being satisfied at what point with the stimuli that we are taking in, with the content that we are taking in. Meaning, it's important to know when to weight the source of the content as information, or the main function is to simply inspire, or if it should be weighted at all, and if it's just purely entertainment. And what I've seen myself be guilty of and get in trouble with is when I misweight the person or the source of that information, the author that I'm listening to for inspiration, and I confuse them to be someone who can be taken credibly and exactly at their word accurately with any form or any more than a grain of salt. And again, the same if someone whose pure job is to get views and entertain you might have some skew to the information now that they're providing you, and over time it will skew even more to serve that entertainment purpose. And again, your ability to take in bland information without the necessity of it being dressed up as entertainment or pierce you with inspiration to first get your attention will set you apart from anyone else around you if you can just take in information that's bland. The point is, it is very important, the person who is there consuming the content, very important for you to know what is being offered, what the intent of it is, and how to digest it so you can assign proper value in assessment. As I became aware of myself playing out this dynamic, and of course, being naturally inclined to criticize myself, I started to ask myself, well, if you listen to all these inspirational things, and if you take in all this information, and you forego so much entertainment in the pursuit of these other two things because you put them at higher value, then why are you not successful? Why are you not what you want to be? More specifically, why is it that the inspiration, the information, does not reach past the moment listening to it, does not reach past into the taking in of it? What is the barrier to action? And then, in a moment of softness, rare for me, towards myself, I realized it isn't that there's a barrier to action at all. There's a part of me that listens and consumes information and inspiration as a simple way to manage my state of being at that moment. It's not even to tie an expectation of action to. And if I was to tell you the sick amount of content that I take in on a weekly basis, you would think it's inhuman. It wouldn't be possible to action it all. And maybe I'm past the point of effectiveness and I should tone that down. But for me, it serves a purpose. And that's not to take action from all of it, because there's too many profound things from profound people that even one of their things that they mention would take a lifetime to master. So in that moment of softness, a lightness of expectation towards myself, I realized all this content's purpose that I'm listening to, that it's meant to serve, is a form of inspiration for me. A mental diet of healthy stimuli that I surround myself with. It's not there to provide me with direction to action. It's there as a tool that I use to nurture the environment around me to be more positive than the negative ruminating that can easily take me away in a shower or a workout or any dead time without a clear purpose. Now, I can do this to my own detriment and drown out all the silences with different forms of stimuli and take away all my rumination time, but I'm trying to be conscious of that. At least, even without the clear direction that all of this is unable to give me, and side note, there really is no direction to be found outside of the discoveries you will make on the path that you choose to walk one step at a time. No one can walk with you to your own unique journey. So you can't even look to anything for direction anyway. But again, even without the clear direction that all of this content is unable to give me, at least over time, my being and even my unguided rumination finds ideals, a true north towards which to head, through the countless examples of beautiful stories and ideas and philosophies that I take in. But again, not to lose the main theme of our episode, it is important still for me to know this and be conscious of it and not to confuse it with direction and information. And maybe even accept some of it as entertainment. I also say all this because some of the ideas presented in what is meant to be inspiration cannot and would be downright dangerous and detrimental to take as literal direction. I often play this internal battle when I'm listening to people talk about the law of attraction, when I'm listening to The Leading Edge with Abraham Hicks. Because some part of it is just so right that you can feel it in your core. It just sits right with the spirit. But as a form of direction in the material world, it doesn't necessarily offer navigation visceral enough to satisfy my desire. It leaves something to be wanted for me. And I think it's meant to, in a way, in its design. What I mean is, it is exactly and accurately the exact spirit with which we need to fundamentally operate within the world to expect abundance, to expect that what it is that you desire also desires you and is waiting for you to be ready to meet it. The spirit of that is exactly right, and I feel that in my core. But to make my point, this content, the spirit that it is trying to promote is really meant to, in my opinion, meant to guide the spirit with which we operate. I don't necessarily think it's meant to offer clear enough direction with which to operate in the real modern world. At least I haven't found a way to fully integrate it, and I'm only a novice at this. Again, I'm teasing this out loud with what's going on in my head, and maybe there's some idea that is more clear of a direction waiting for me behind this. And again, the spirit I want to maintain tells me to expect that there is more clarity and direction behind this. But it's important for me to not get lost in what is meant to affect my spirit and have it or expect it to guide the direction with which I am supposed to live my life. Those two require different levels of resolution. Higher, lower resolution, clarity, and actually operate on different planes altogether. And not that they conflict each other at all, but it's important to recognize them in their own regard and where they sit when you are taking them in. Again, just a thought. Next time you find yourself listening to something or watching something, even if you reflect on this episode and your time with me, ask yourself, am I seeking, satisfying, and satiating inspiration, information, or entertainment? I love you, family. See you in the next show.